Well, good evening and welcome to the first Essex District State Representative Candidates Debate here at the Nock Middle School in Newburyport. I am Pete Falcone from WNBP Radio, and tonight's debate is presented by the Newburyport Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Newburyport Daily News, PortMedia, and the Legends WNBP Radio. Tonight's debate will go for 1 hour. I would like to introduce our panel who will be asking the questions of our candidates tonight. In the center is Attorney Grace Connolly, a partner with the law offices of Connolly & Connolly in Newburyport, and is a member of the Massachusetts and Florida bars. She was born in Santiago, Cuba, and is a naturalized U.S. citizen, speaks Spanish, French, and English, serves as the chairperson of the board of directors of the Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and is a trustee and secretary of Anna Jakes Hospital. To her left is Richard Lodge, the managing editor of the Daily News of Newburyport, a position he took on October 17th. Prior to that, Richard was an editor with Gatehouse Media for the past 23 years, most recently overseeing the Metro West Daily News in Framingham, the Milford Daily News, and 18 weekly newspapers and websites. He has worked as an editor at the daily newspapers in Lowell, New Bedford, Southbridge, and Portland, Maine, and started his career as a reporter at the weekly Marblehead Messenger. In 2014, he was inducted into the Academy of New England Journalists, and he currently serves as president of the New England Society of News Editors. He and his wife, Marcia Boundy, have been homeowners in Newburyport since 2012 and live in the South End. And also is Karin van der Wielen. Karin is a senior at Newburyport High School, an active leader in his school's Model United Nations program, and has attended 8 Model UN conferences, winning awards such as Outstanding Delegate and Honorable Mention. Karin is currently executive president of EISJMUN, a Model UN conference held in Dubai. He's also the co-founder and secretary general of PortMedia, a regional middle school Model UN conference held at Newburyport High School, and teaches Model UN as a student advisor at the Nock Middle School. Current was vice chairman of the Global Youth Summit, a youth assembly held at the United Nations building in New York City, and gave the opening remarks there in July. Additionally, he's an active member of the German Honor Society and was an exchange partner for the German-American Partnerships Program in 2015 and 16. In his free time, he enjoys traveling, playing video games, and writing. Those are our panelists for tonight. Now for tonight's format, each candidate will be allowed an opening statement of 2 minutes, the order of which and seating was determined by a random draw earlier tonight. Answers to the panel's questions shall not exceed 2 minutes. Each candidate may offer a rebuttal of up to 30 seconds. Near the end of the debate, each may ask the other one question with the answer of 1 minute and a rebuttal of up to 30 seconds. Each candidate will be allowed a closing statement of 2 minutes, done in the reverse order of the opening remarks. Our timekeeper, Ann Orman from the Newburyport Chamber, is seated in front of the candidates here and will alert them when they have 30 seconds remaining and when their time is up. So now let's meet the candidates for 1st Essex District State Representative. First is James Kelcourse, the state representative for the 1st Essex District. He lives in Amesbury and is married to Amanda. They have 2 sons, Michael, age 7, and Tommy, age 5. Jim is a graduate of Amesbury High School. He attended Villanova University, where he obtained a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and a Master of Business Administration. Jim also graduated from the Massachusetts School of Law with a Juris Doctor degree. Jim is a self-employed attorney with an office in Newburyport. He served from 2008 to 2009 on the Amesbury Planning Board. In 2009, he was elected to serve on the Amesbury City Council and served there as an at-large member from 2010 to 2014. In 2014, Jim was elected to the House of Representatives, where he currently represents Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury in the State House. James Kelcourse. Brianna Sullivan was born and raised in Newburyport, is the daughter of Marcia Riley Sullivan, who worked in the Newburyport Public Schools and was the librarian at the Brown School, and Ron Sullivan, a local attorney. Her aunt Sue Stone taught in the Newburyport Public Schools for over 30 years. Brianna graduated from Newburyport High School and earned degrees from Cornell University and Northeastern University School of Law. Following law school, she spent 2 years as a law clerk for the Massachusetts Superior Court. Brianna now lives in Amesbury with her husband James Simpson and their son Brady. She works as a community liaison at a local public library and practices law in Newburyport. Brianna, a Democrat, is a first-time candidate endorsed by Attorney General Maura Healey and U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, and serves on the Amesbury Cultural Council and the Board of Directors of the Women's Bar Association. Brianna Sullivan. Now we will move to our opening statements, and according to the draw, before we get underway, our first opening statement will come from James Kelcourse.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I especially want to thank everybody from Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury for the privilege and the opportunity to serve you in the State House. I have to tell you, the last 2 years has been terrific, and I've been thrilled to be serving you as your state representative. We've accomplished a lot over the last 2 years, a significant amount. In fact, so much so that I think the citizens of Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury have really taken notice of the things, and they've complimented us quite significantly. They've let us know how hard we work, and I say we because I couldn't do this without a terrific office. I've had a great office staff the 2 years that I've been in there. I've had a remarkable relationship with both Governor Baker and Governor Polito, Lieutenant Governor Polito rather, maybe someday Governor. But at any rate, I've had a remarkable relationship with the administration, but I've also had a tremendous relationship with the Democratic leadership. And I think that's attributable to going in there with the intent of making friends. Not an ideology, no partisan antics or anything like that. It's been all about making friends and relationships in the State House. Because at the end of the day, as I told all of you, while I've knocked on thousands of doors this time around and last time around, I represent 40,000 people in the State House. Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury. I have 40,000 people who are men, women, black, white, Hispanic, gay, straight, all different types. And their interests are the interests that I'm to serve in the State House. Not my own interests, not any party's interests, and that's why you often find me crossing party lines to get things done and to get the amount of money that I have for Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury over the 189th session of the General Court. Thank you.
Brianna Sullivan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's a really important evening. Thank you especially to the Chamber of Commerce, WNBP, Newburyport Daily News, and PortMedia. My name's Brianna Sullivan, and I want to be your next state representative for Amesbury, Newburyport, and Salisbury. I have deep roots in this district. I was born and raised here in Newburyport. My parents were as well, Ron and Marcia. My grandparents and great-grandparents worked in local institutions like Atkinson's Oil and Lumber, Amesbury Hat Factory, and Puritans that used to be on Pleasant Street. My mom was an elementary school librarian. She was at the Belleville before it was the Bresnahan, the Kelly, and the Brown School. My aunt, as Pete mentioned, was in Newburyport High School, and I actually had her for math for 30-some-odd years. I grew up on Monroe Street. I am a product of Newburyport Public Schools. I attended Cornell University and went on to Northeastern University School of Law. I started my career as a lawyer in public service as a law clerk to the justices of the Superior Court. And for the last 2 years, I've been a community liaison at a nearby public library, working on community engagement and community programming. I know how to listen to the public, to my constituents, and to bring them the programs and services that they want and need. I'm now an Amesbury resident where I've lived for the last 3 years with my husband and our son Brady. and I volunteer my time with the Amesbury Cultural Council. I also serve on the board of the Women's Bar Association. I think we need to make it easier for all families to not just survive, but thrive. It's tough for working families to juggle work and kids. It's tough for seniors to continue to live in their community once they retire. And it's really hard for families struggling with mental health issues, substance abuse, or disabilities. I've been endorsed by the Attorney General and U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren because they recognize that I will fight for the hardworking families and individuals in this district. I'm running for office because I love my community and I have a deep passion for making positive change in the lives of many. Thank you.
At this point, we'll ask you to hold your applause until we get to the end of the debate, so now that we can get into the questions. And the first question from our panel is going to come from Karen van der Wielen.
I've attended Newburyport High School for 4 years, and the largest issue surrounding my school has been a lack of resources because of its budget. We have an art department which last year couldn't afford paper towards the end of the year, and many full-time teachers are leaving to be replaced by part-time teachers. The band instructors work on half-time and use music sheets, which are sometimes 4 decades old. Most classes I attend don't use textbooks, and those that do use outdated copies. We've all heard a lot about Question 2 and about supplemental charter schools. But what are you going to do about the public schools, which will still be there, regardless if Question 2 passes?
Was there anybody in
Excellent.
particular? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you for being here this evening. Simple, continue to work hard. Local aid comes in many forms, not just Chapter 70, but unrestricted general government aid. And I can tell you, over the last 22 months, we've brought more than $10 million back to this district. That $10 million, whether it be $300,000 for the Blackwater River Flood Control Project, $5 million for a parking garage here in Newburyport that's going to help generate revenue, that type of funding is going to relieve the stress and pressure on the municipal budget. Municipal budget, by the way, which I'm very familiar with after having served 5 terms in the Amesbury City Council as an at-large member and a year before that on the planning board. Every single spring, we'd have school teachers come in and tell us that they don't have enough money to buy supplies to educate their students. And every December, we'd find another host of folks that would come in and say that their property taxes are too high. I ran for the state legislature and have worked 7 days a week and 7 nights a week since being elected to help bring as much local aid back, necessary local aid back to the class, not just the classroom, but for other municipal services, so you can receive the education that you deserve.
Thank you, Karen, for that question. I think so much of it comes from funding from the state. Representative Kalkhorst mentioned the local amount of money that's spent, and the fact is the state does not provide enough money for our local communities to support all of the mandates that they're required to fulfill. Special education is one of those mandates. I support something called the Fair Share Tax Amendment, which would generate up to $2 billion by creating a modest graduated tax scale. So the first $1 million that somebody makes would be at the 5.1% that everybody now pays, and then every dollar over $1 million would be taxed at 9%. And the idea is that that money targets Chapter 70 education and Chapter 90 local infrastructure, and it could do so much good for our communities and for our property taxpayers and for our children in the public schools. So I think it's really important that we focus on Chapter 70 reform as well as additional revenue streams so that schools can be funded appropriately. Thank you.
Yeah, so upon being sworn into the legislature, one of the first things that I did is I filed 3 bills, 2 having to do with special education and another having to do with the Chapter 70 revise. I'm proud to say that all 3 of those bills have been included in what's called the Foundation Budget Review Commission's final October 2015 report. And that report made some recommendations that are actually going to take a little bit of time, but I've closely worked as a member of the Joint Committee on Education with Representative Alice Peisch, a Democrat out of Wellesley. She's part of the leadership team, and she's terrific to work with.
So this question is also both for Representative Kalkhorst and for Ms. Sullivan, and this time we're going to ask Ms. Sullivan first. It has been widely publicized in the news and highlighted in a report of the Health Policy Commission that many community hospitals, like Anna Jake's Hospital, are paid substantially lower reimbursements by commercial insurers than the rates that are paid to other hospitals for the same or comparable service. The disparity in insurance reimbursement rates for community hospitals threatens the survival of independent institutions, independent community hospitals, and results in higher healthcare costs. Governor Charlie Baker recently appointed a commission to study the problem and to make recommendations. As insurance reimbursement disparity is an important issue for our community hospital and our district, what role do you think state government should play to help solve the problem, and would you support legislation that would help correct this?
Thank you, Grace. I absolutely would support such legislation. Anna Jake's Hospital is such an important part of our community. I was born there, my husband was born there, my son was born there, my grandmother volunteered there for years. She was so beloved there that even the CEO of the hospital was at her funeral, which was amazing. And it just shows what a tight community this is. And it's simply not fair for bigger, more powerful hospitals to be advocating for higher rates, especially for services that could be equally provided in our communities, and charging more for those same services. So I think that the commission that was put together is a wonderful idea. There's an amazing team that's been put together. I think that they absolutely should play a role in helping to negotiate fair rates to try and induce competition, because right now there's not enough competition amongst hospitals as well as the insurance industry. And I think that they should, excuse me, absolutely make sure that drug companies are charging fair prices for prescriptions, because I see those as really what drives the high cost of health care in our state. Thank you.
I'll tell you how important Anna Jake's Hospital is. I ended up there on Saturday and got 6 stitches in my hand. Silly me, pulled the campaign materials out so fast, I hit the latch on the trunk, and I ended up with a big gash on my knuckle, and it wasn't pretty. But thanks to the great staff, they quickly had me back out door knocking within an hour and a half of opening up my hand. But I recommended Mark Goldstein, our wonderful CEO of Anna Jake's Hospital, to His Excellency, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, to be appointed to the Price Variation Commission, a very important commission. I worked very closely with the Governor and his staff to get Mr. Goldstein, because I thought it was very, very important that Anna Jake's Hospital is represented here, because not only does it create jobs, it provides excellent health care. And we want to keep those jobs, and we want to keep that excellent health care right here in the 1st Essex District, right here in Newburyport. My best friend, I've got 2 best friends. I've actually got one out there in the audience, his mother that worked for Anna Jake's for a long time, and my other pal's mom worked there for a long, long time. And they're great people, and they provide great services, and I want to make sure that we keep those jobs right here in Newburyport.
Ms. Sullivan?
I just want to reiterate the answer that I gave to the question of what role the commission should have in both helping to control drug prescription costs, as well as inducing competition between the larger and smaller entities, and not allowing the larger hospitals to set the rates for services that our community hospital can provide. As the representative mentioned, it's I believe one of the biggest employers in our region. It's so important that we foster the community services that they provide.
Thank you. This question we start with Representative Kelkhorst. Continuing in the healthcare vein, we can all agree there's a crisis of opioid abuse in New England and across the country. Would the passage of question 4, which would legalize marijuana for anyone 21 and over, complicate our fight against opioid abuse? And if question 4 passes, are we sending a mixed message to young people?
Absolutely. I don't want my child, consuming edibles. Look, this isn't yes or no about marijuana. This is about the over 50% of edibles that are going to be out there in the marketplace and regulated just like alcohol. It's going to, I think, have an effect on children when we're dealing with a crisis right now, a serious crisis where we have 4 deaths a day happening in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I gave my maiden speech in late April, and I really have a hard time with this, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I came back from giving my maiden speech, and I talked with Chief Tom Fowler of the, Chief Tom Fowler of the Salisbury Police Department asked me to speak at one of his opioid forums, and a young man came up to me afterwards, and he says, I've really wanted to meet you for a long time, and he says, I want to talk to you about how I can help this crisis, and he pulled up his sleeve, and he had marks all up and down his arms, and he died 3 days later. His mom called me and said that they found him deceased, and I just thought about my 2 little boys. I'm sorry. And I don't think it's appropriate to commercialize something like that. If anybody watched 60 Minutes, they saw what was going on out in Colorado. And to just open up the door, to have somebody end up like that young man in Salisbury who got a tuition-free full ride to a Massachusetts school because he was an Abigail Adams scholar, to see him end his life at 27 years old because his dad said, anyway, I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Thank you. I respectfully disagree. I think the opioid crisis and question 4 can be separated. I feel very strongly that the approach we've been taken to have marijuana be illegal is not working. The fact is so many people have access to it. And I also feel that basically we're letting people go to a black market that has things like heroin, cocaine, other really bad substances, and putting people in the position of going to that black market. And there's not evidence of a lot of the fears that people talk about legalizing marijuana. I've read a lot about this, but what's going on in Colorado. I also feel strongly that if question 4 passes, it's up to the legislature to handle it by really tightly regulating particularly edibles. I do have an issue with the edibles and making sure that they're not accessible to children. I think advertising needs to be strictly regulated. I think the packaging needs to be strictly regulated. I think where they're sold needs to be strictly regulated. But frankly, I think putting it out in the open and having it be similar to alcohol is really the best way to approach it and make sure it's not getting in the hands of children and making sure people are not going to a black market and being exposed to a heroin dealer when they want something that's far less hazardous.
3 things: OUIs, Governor of Colorado, and Governor of Colorado again. Governor of Colorado on 60 Minutes this past weekend, if you watched the episode, said, wait a few more years to see how this all works out in Colorado. Furthermore, there's no accurate test to prevent people from driving under the influence of alcohol. Ms. Sullivan's an attorney, I'm an attorney. When I was practicing more often, I was in the courtroom, and every Monday morning, there's a whole new bunch of cases, OUI, in the courtroom. We don't need any more.
Mrs. Sullivan, Massachusetts has strong gun laws that have helped us achieve the 2nd lowest gun death rate in the United States. If you are elected, would you support legislation that upholds the current laws and additional legislation that might decrease the number of gun deaths and injuries in the state?
Thank you. Yes, I think this is one of the greatest public health crises facing this country. I'm very proud to live in a state where our gun laws are so strong. I'm very proud to have an attorney general who is fighting to keep those gun laws strong, and I'm very proud to be endorsed by that attorney general. We have strong laws because that is one of our values, and we have strong laws because we don't let gun manufacturers determine what is and is not legal. I 100% support the Attorney General's enforcement of the assault weapons ban. I think that allowing a gun manufacturer to decide whether their deadly product complies with our laws is simply unconscionable. And I strongly support regulations that keep illegal weapons off the streets and make our streets safer. That said, I completely respect the Second Amendment. I am an attorney. I understand constitutional law. Nobody is going to repeal the Second Amendment. That's certainly not a goal of mine. My goal is to make sure people are safe in this state and in our country, and that is why I support the laws that we have on the books, and I strongly support making sure they're enforced properly.
Representative Kelcourse.
I don't think anybody disagrees with keeping illegal guns out of criminals' hands and off the street, especially me, but there are a lot of law-abiding sportsmen out there, people who legally, responsibly own firearms, and there were 81 people who signed a Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee, John Fernandez's letter, in addition to Leader Brad Jones's letter asking the Attorney General to clarify what her interpretation might be. There might be some people out there that just don't want firearms, that's clear. I've encountered those folks at the State House. In fact, one of them, I believe, is working for Miss Sullivan, lives in Newburyport here, spent over an hour of time with her in the State House within my first month of being sworn into office. But you know, the process is that legislatively, if you want to take those firearms that were legally obtained away from people, you got to go through the legislative process. And House Bill 4376 was signed into law by then Governor Deval Patrick, and it's a bill that I said that I endorsed, that I supported before, and it was actually a bill that was endorsed by the Gun Owners Action League, which is an affiliate of the National Rifle Association.
Mrs. Sullivan.
So Jim, as many of you may know, is endorsed by the NRA and also the Gun Owners Action League and has a top rating from them, and that exemplifies his beliefs on these issues. They have certain agendas, and part of that agenda is chipping away at our strong laws. I think that the Attorney General's action was a certain way to make sure that our laws don't get chipped away at by entities and manufacturers who don't have our public's best interest at stake. This is not about sportsmen.
Well, I would like to say that there are several members of the Democratic caucus who are endorsed by the NRA. Quite a few of them, in fact. Mark Pacheco is a senator. He's you know, the famous Pacheco law that we all talk about with respect to prevailing wage and so forth. Mark Pacheco has an endorsement from the National Rifle Association. Ann Goby, she's the Senate chairwoman of a committee that I serve on, which is Agriculture, Natural Resources, and the Environment. She's endorsed by the NRA. So a lot of people are endorsed by the NRA. It's not a bad thing.
The rebuttal of the rebuttal.
Yes.
Is there a rebuttal of the rebuttal?
That's what that is.
No? So this next question, is it for Jim? No?
Yeah.
This next question is for Representative Kelcourse. Salisbury and Newburyport, as well as many communities along the New England coast, are seeing serious beach erosion problems brought on by rising sea levels and other factors. What will you do as state representative to help address the beach erosion problems in the future?
Well, we have a great coalition of folks that gets together monthly. I give a lot of credit to Senator Bruce Tarr. He gets us all together at Peter Hall on Plum Island. And we meet monthly and we address the issues of erosion at Reservation Terrace. I've actually met with Mr. Baker, who lives down on Reservation Terrace, a couple of times. I was actually over his house not long ago, but I was over before that. We have to really keep focused on the erosion issues down there, not just on Plum Island, but also on Salisbury Beach. And I think with the sand replenishment plan that we've been engaged in, myself and Senator Kathleen O'Connor Ives, we worked very, very hard to make sure that we keep the dune restored. We've worked with Commissioner Leo Roy of DCR. He's been a great asset in the Baker administration and a terrific teammate in addressing the issues of concern on Salisbury Beach and on Plum Island. And we're looking at ways in which not only to just, you know, prevent the erosion, but to also protect the environment. So again, going back to that connection with the governor, when we need emergency funds to protect the citizens of Plum Island, I have a direct pipeline right to the governor's office. In fact, Lieutenant Governor Polito was fantastic during the winter storms of 2015 when we needed outside assistance. Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and the New York State Department of Transportation trucks. I took a call, I think it was close to 11 o'clock at night, from then City Marshal, Marshal Howard, and he indicated to me, look, Jim, we need these snow melting pieces of equipment out there. Having that relationship with the administration, being able to keep that necessary equipment out there is terrific, and working with the administration on further erosion and prevention measures has been one of my top priorities, and it's taken up. As Representative Mira will say, we spend a lot of time on Plum Island. And I spend with Senator O'Connor a lot of time on Salisbury Beach.
So the question of beach erosion really goes back to the environment and climate change and the way our environment is changing. So to have Representative Kelcourse talk about working on these things when he's done things like vote against a state climatologist, vote against full funding for the Department of Conservation and Recreation, vote against full funding for the Department of Environmental Protection, frankly, to me, seems like lip service. We need to take a serious approach to our environment and to conservation and to making sure that we're fully funding the entities that we have charged with protecting it. And we need to make sure that we have somebody who's an expert on climate change who can advise us as to how best to approach that. In conjunction with that, we need to keep working on our alternative energies and limiting greenhouse gases if we want to have any fighting chance against climate change. There was a bill passed for alternative energy, but we need to do more, frankly. We need to increase our renewable energy portfolio. We need to foster more solar projects. We need to foster more offshore wind projects. And that's really the only way we're ever going to be able to make a difference on this issue.
Maybe we can raise some of those monies from the millionaire's tax. But at any rate, no, it is important, the funding the budget. And you know, I have voted many times against the governor for veto overrides. There isn't one time I've ever voted to cut the budget with respect to any of these items. The budget last I looked when I first came into office was $38.4 billion. This year it's $39.1 billion. We didn't vote to cut anything.
Well,
Thank you. A question, I think that's
do I get a rebuttal?
I think we started with, I don't think you get a rebuttal to a rebuttal.
Rebuttal on this one, okay. It's fine.
Okay, let's continue. A question for Ms. Sullivan. On your website, you describe your work experience as a law clerk, a community liaison for a local library, and as a member of the Amesbury Cultural Council. Do you think your lack of experience as an elected official on a municipal policy-making board is any kind of detriment to being a successful state representative?
I do not, otherwise I wouldn't be running. My background touches on so many issues that a state representative would deal with. As a law clerk, I'm interpreting laws and seeing how laws impact real people in real life. Researching and understanding complex laws was part of the job. Working with judges and hashing out the best way to interpret the laws and how they apply to the facts was all part of my duty. And it was a great position to learn how the laws impact people. As an attorney, I represent individuals. I'm an advocate, just like I will be an advocate for the people of Amesbury, Newburyport, and Salisbury. I also have been at a public library for the last almost just over 2 years, and I work with constituents every day. I'm putting programs together for them. I'm listening to their needs. I'm listening to their wants. I'm helping them find resources. These are all things that my understanding as a state representative does every day. I'm a people person. I'm out there working with the public. There's sometimes challenges, and there's also a lot of excitement you get by helping somebody, find a resource, by helping somebody solve a problem. And this is what I have done in various ways for a living. I also also am on the Amesbury Cultural Council. So I'm in the community. I'm hearing from people as to what they want to see. We're providing an economic development opportunity by the programs that we put on. So there's a whole range of experiences and skills I have that touch on all of the jobs that a state representative has, and I'm excited to wear all those hats. It'll actually be more convenient to have them in just one job, so I look forward to the opportunity.
Thank you. Representative, I think you get a minute.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I've been serving as a public servant in the community since 2008. I've been doing this now just over 8 years. First on the planning board, 5 years on the Amesbury City Council, and then 2 years as your state representative. You know, there's a big difference between actually saying and then going out there and doing. And we've been doing that for you for the past 2 years. We've been working very hard, tirelessly. You know, every now and then everybody gets a kick out of the Facebook selfies, but the reason for our Facebook selfies and all of our posts is to tell you or to let you know we're your state representative and what your state representative is up to each and every day. And we're out there working very, very hard for you. In the morning we might be at the senior center. In the afternoon we might be over at the State House. In between we might be helping somebody with a mass health issue, and you know, the following day we're arguing for benefits for our homeless veterans living in Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury. If you can believe it, we have homeless veterans living in the area.
Ms. Sullivan?
Well, I just want to add a little bit about the range of services that I have to deal with at the library where I work. You know, I see people come in who don't have jobs, who are struggling to find something, who don't know how to post a resume or how to download an email attachment. I see a need for services there. That's something that will instruct me as your state representative. Understanding those gaps of knowledge and the needs of the public is so important, and I do that every day. Thank you.
Representative Kelcourse, many people in my generation view politics as corrupt, negative, and counterproductive, and it's an attitude which may undermine the American political system going forward. What are you going to do to send a more positive message, be a better role model in politics, and what will you do to help get my generation involved more in politics?
We're going to continue to do what we've been doing for the past 2 years, and that's been working in a very bipartisan fashion. Look, I joined the Republican Party. It'll be 4 years this coming, I think, the end of November, beginning of December. I ran for senator as an independent candidate. I swore back then that I was going to be the first independent, because back in 2012 it was my goal to go to the State House and to work with everybody, just as it was my goal in 2014 to become, upon becoming your state representative, to work with everybody. I think we've demonstrated over the last 2 years the ability to work with everybody. And you know, Curran, it's so important. That's why we open up our doors to the State House to you guys all the time, to bring the students in. That's why we sit you in the House chamber and we talk to the students about the importance of being involved and the importance of working with each other and not going in there with a set ideology, saying, you know, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and it's going to be Republican or Democrat. Again, I'll say this, I came into this representing 40,000 people, 40,000 Republicans, Democrats, male, female, black, white, Hispanic, all different types. And I have to put what my feelings are aside, and I have to put the feelings of this district first, and we're going to continue to do that for the next 2 years and hopefully for some time beyond then as well.
Ms. Sullivan.
It's such a great question. And I think one of the ways that you've already experienced when we were talking earlier, and some of your classmates as well, is getting involved in campaigns. You know, being involved in a local election. I've been honored really to have young people helping out with my campaign, and for them to see regular people who are in their community of varied backgrounds and going and talking to the voters. It's such an important experience for young people to have, and it shows them that local politics can be interesting and it doesn't have to be nasty, and it's not all about ideology. It's about the issues, and having kids involved in the legislative process, having them learn about how those decisions are made is also really important, because it is about finding solutions. So I think being able to involve young people from top to bottom in the process, from campaigning to working on legislation, is great. And I'm really impressed by how young people are getting involved, especially in a contentious election season, because it's important for them to be active citizens.
You know, there's a reason why Governor Baker has a better than 70% approval rating, and it's because he demonstrates an ability to get along with people. He brought in one very, in particular, one very great person who I get along with very, very well, and that's Secretary Jay Ash, a lifelong Democrat. The relationship that I've forged with him has helped out this district significantly, and it's that type of example that I think we're setting, Republicans and Democrats working together for our younger generation, so that you guys can learn by our example.
So this next question is from Ms. Sullivan. Efforts to increase the state gas tax to pay for more road and bridge repair failed under Governor Deval Patrick. Although we see major repaving projects on local roads and the interstates, hundreds of smaller bridges and rural roads across the state are in rough shape, with many of those bridges deemed by the state to be in need of immediate replacement. Where do you think we can get more money to pay for urgent road and bridge repairs?
Thank you, Grace. I mentioned it earlier in the context of education, but we need more funding for these projects, and local cities and towns simply don't have the resources, and it's not fair to put more pressure on property taxpayers in order to fund these projects, because they're really a resource for the whole state. And that's why I support the Fair Share Tax Amendment, which would generate close to $2 billion by adding that extra bracket on money made over $1 million. I know that my opponent is against that tax and voted against putting it on the ballot in 2018, but I think it's an important solution that really makes our tax system more fair. The effective tax rate that the very rich people in our state pay is lower than what regular working class people pay, and it's just distributing the burden in a more fair manner.
So the reason that my opponent just gave is the exact reason why I voted against the Fair Share Amendment, or sending the Fair Share Amendment to the ballot in 2018, because the argument is that the $2 billion generated from the Fair Share Amendment is to go to education and transportation. That's education and transportation. And you know what? It's going to go into the general fund. It's going to be spread all over the place, and you don't know where it's going to go. It's not just going to go to one thing, but it's going to go to several other things. That right there is the reason why we have to be very careful, and why I actually supported an amendment. And that's amendment number 11, that would ensure that it goes to both education and transportation, just not one or the other. The big lion's share of the budget, if you look at the state pie, has to do with over 40% healthcare, and a significant portion for education. Education is a really big cost here in the Commonwealth, as it is a cost at the municipal level, both in Amesbury, Newburyport, and Salisbury. The vast majority of your municipal budget goes to education. I think in Amesbury it's over 60%, and Newburyport it's up there significantly high as well. So we have to ensure that any revenues that we generate are going to be going to their specified purpose. What we did in the legislature recently, is we passed a municipal modernization bill. That municipal modernization bill provided for municipal roads and bridges. We have money already in the budget set aside to put into roads and bridges. We have that money. The Baker administration has been very efficient in managing your tax dollars wisely, so that we can invest those necessary funds back to the places where they're supposed to go. Just instituting an escalated or a graduated income tax isn't going to be able to do that, folks. There's no proof that the data is there to support that type of revenue for these types of projects that are already appropriated for.
Well, frankly, I do think it is important, though, that we fund those two things, education under Chapter 70 and local infrastructure under Chapter 90, more effectively. And I think that it's time for Massachusetts to join some 30 states in having a graduated income tax. It's a modest increase. The federal government does it. So many other states do it, and it simply levels the playing field, because the fact of the matter is the effective tax rate that a millionaire pays is lower than what regular people pay, and that's why I support it.
Well, again, there's no...
No.
That's it.
Okay.
One rebuttal there. This is a question for you, Representative Kelcourse. In an interview with the Daily News recently, you listed millions of dollars in state funds that you said you brought home to the district. Name one specific appropriation for which you were the primary sponsor and detail what you did to win passage of that bill.
Community Development Block Grant. So I see two folks, two selectmen from Salisbury out there this evening. I was sitting in a meeting before myself and my aide at the time. We were introducing ourselves to the various city councils and boards of selectmen, the communities in which we were going to represent. Then Chairman Freeman Condon, when given a report, the selectmen were given a report on the status of the Community Development Block Grant, said, you know, I don't think we're going to be, Lisa Pearson, the town planner, said, I don't think we're going to be able to get this. For whatever reason, at the time, Amesbury wasn't expressing an interest in joining, being a joint applicant because of the numbers. They would join and they would both apply together to receive this $1 million funding. Freeman Condon, Selectman Condon, then Chairman Condon said, we've got somebody from Amesbury here in the audience. I met with Lisa Pearson and Town Manager Neil Harrington in the hall, and my aide and I went right over to Amesbury. That following morning, we met with Mayor Gray. We met with the Economic Development Director, Bill Scott, and we made that application for the $1 million. And 6 months later, Governor Baker was up here at the YMCA, the YMCA over in Salisbury, the old elementary school, to celebrate, along with Secretary Jay Ash, that $1 million that we received. There were other sources of funding, $300,000 for the Blackwater River Flood Control Project. I think it was 2 days before Thanksgiving last year, I received a call. I pulled over the side of the road in Salem. I got a call from Secretary Beaton's office, and I'll never forget, he says, can you get, you've got $300,000. I think he told Neil Harrington, said Neil Harrington can pitch in $100,000. I called Neil Harrington. I said, Neil, can you come up with the additional 100? He says, I got $77,268.26. I said, you want me to call the administration for the other $22,000 change? He says, no, we'll take the $300,000. So, I mean, it's working like that to get money for the communities that I think I've been directly responsible for.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan?
So Jim mentioned the block grant of $1 million, and he mentioned in passing Lisa Pearson, who's the grant writer in Salisbury, and she's amazing at what she does. And I believe it was mostly her work in writing that grant and making it appealing, not to discredit pulling some people together to get it passed at that last minute, but that's not the same as the work that Senator Ives did in 2014 and Representative Mike Costello, who was then in his seat, did to get that $5 million for the Newburyport parking garage into the transportation bond bill, or the $1.4 million for the boardwalk and the environmental bond bill in 2014.
Representative, 30 seconds.
Yes, I think Senator Kathleen O'Connor Ives said it best on October 19th to the Daily News with respect to the $1.4 million. However, I've said yesterday, just being in the bill isn't enough. It takes a sitting governor to turn the promise into cash. Quote unquote, this administration released the money. And I can tell you right now, we had Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito up here touring businesses with me yesterday. It's the relationship, that strong relationship that I've forged with the administration by going in there and making friends that's delivered this money for the district. It's a two-step process.
Ms. Sullivan, what traits or qualities do you have that you think make you the best candidate for this position?
Thank you. That's an interesting question. I believe, first of all, you need to have an interest in really learning the nuts and bolts. I get told by people sometimes that I'm quote-unquote too wonky because I get weeded in the details. But you need somebody who's going to do that, who's going to look at the nuts and bolts of both problems that we face and legislation that's being proposed. I talked a little bit about my experience as a law clerk for the Superior Court, and that's just the type of background and that you need to be successful. And the reason I excelled at that is because I like to get into the weeds and look at the details. I'm a people person. There's definitely a very important aspect of this job that's being a people person. One of the things I've loved about campaigning is meeting the voters one-on-one, you know, stopping at their houses, going in for a drink of water when we were door knocking when it was 100 degrees out, and talking to them about their problems, whether it was the sweet little old lady whose husband had just passed away and you could tell she needed somebody to talk to, or the mother who was telling me about how excited she was about her son graduating, going off to college. You need to enjoy that aspect of it, and I absolutely do. It's been one of my favorite things about campaigning, and it's what I will continue to do as your representative, being present, being in the community. I'm in Amesbury almost every day, going to the coffee shop and the pet store, and the local florist, and talking to the business owners and hearing what they want and need, and really being a part of that community. I love doing that in Amesbury. Newburyport's my hometown. I'm here so often, whether I'm stopping by at the law office where I work. So it's really being that integral part of the community, and that's something I enjoy, and I think that's a really important characteristic as well.
Thank you. Representative Kelcourse.
It's my hugs, right, Grace? No, I think it's just being, just a genuine person, somebody that wants to be out there and actively work really, really hard from the community. I think, my opponent said it best when she sent me an email back in January. She says, it's nice to know that our area is represented by someone who is still involved in the area and who is personable and interested in his constituents' thoughts. I thought that was terrific. I think it summed up exactly what our representation of Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury is all about. It's working hard for you every day. It's developing the relationships, party aside. It's working together and doing what's in your best interest, the best interest of the people of the 1st Essex District.
Well, Jim, I'm glad you mentioned that email, because it brings up another point that I forgot, and that's being able to give a straight and direct answer to your constituents. That email you brought up when I was asking you about the pay equity bill, I was pretty dissatisfied with the answer that I got. I wasn't sure if you supported it, if you were going to be a co-sponsor, and so that's why I think the people deserve to have somebody who will tell them how they feel on an issue and explain their positions, whether we agree or not.
And I voted for that bill.
It was unanimous.
So I think this next question goes to Representative Kelcourse first. Representative Kelcourse, what do you see as the single, if you could just name one, biggest problem in this district, and what will you do to address it if elected?
I think there are there are several different issues that there's no single one issue. I mean, local aid could be one. Those who are really passionate about the schools, as am I. I've got 2 school-age children. Passionate about funding for schools, that could be one. So, as your legislator, I will continue to work in the legislature to bring back as much funding as possible, as much funding that can help educate students like Curran, who's here with us this evening. The opioid crisis is a major crisis. It's something that, again, 4 deaths a day in the Commonwealth. It's just, an unprecedented number of youth in our community are passing away each and every day. I mean, whenever you open up the Newburyport Daily News now, it seems like in the obituary section you have a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, or, and they just didn't die of a heart attack, died unexpectedly. I mean, they died from an overdose. So that's an issue that I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the administration. I know we passed some landmark legislation with Reps Whalen and Tucker. That was a bipartisan effort to criminalize fentanyl trafficking. We did that. We also worked with the administration on a more comprehensive opioid bill to address what really is a disease. And I've been just grateful to have this wonderful mentor and teacher and Sheriff Frank Cousins. He's the reason, why I joined the Republican Party. It was him who demonstrated to me that you can be an independent, that you can vote for everybody, what's best for the people of your district. That's what he taught me. But it's his efforts that brought the 84 person bed to help treat both men and women suffering from this disease in our district.
Ms. Sullivan?
It's a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of challenges that our 3 communities face. Opioid crisis certainly is one of them. But I think economic development, and in conjunction with that, job training is a really important issue and challenge facing all three communities. I know in Amesbury, we want to keep working on our lower mill yard, getting the Heritage Museum set up, and really bringing more people into the downtown. We have some great programs like what the Amesbury Cultural Council does with the studio tour and bringing people into town, and really driving development that way. For Salisbury Beach as well, economic development, both for the downtown and for Route 1, working on getting water sewer project going. I understand the cost is going to be pretty significant, and so I would definitely try to work with the city, the town manager, Neil Harrington, and state officials and federal officials to try and help get that funding pipeline set up, because that could be a real boon for the economic development. And then also supporting job training. We have a lot of employers who need skilled workers, and skilled workers don't have the skills they need. So we really need to support job training programs, whether that's partnering with our local community colleges like Northern Essex and North Shore Community College and making sure they have affordable training programs, helping employers fund training programs for their workers, and matching up the willing workers with the jobs that are appropriate for the skills that they have. So it's sort of a holistic approach to economic development. I think that's really important for our area.
Our senior community. I was with our senior community today, and we talked about my office was terrific. Again, I've been blessed to have a terrific staff. I had my staff working with me on restoring a bus stop in Water Street in Newburyport, the MVRTA stop. Constituent services is bar none the most important, I think, issue in this district. Helping somebody with the classification, of disc fusion or disc replacement. I said, disc what and disc what? And they said, yeah, my insurance company's not going to pay for the surgery I need, so can you help us? And we've helped them.
Thank you. This question is for Ms. Sullivan. What is your opinion of House Speaker Robert DeLeo and how he wields his power?
Well, Speaker DeLeo definitely gets a lot done in a really busy legislative session. I'm obviously not in the legislature currently, but he's been very supportive of me and my campaign. I think that there's a lot of legislators to work with, and so working on specific bills that you want to get passed and building a coalition of people to support them in a bipartisan manner and bringing that to him is really important. But he's trying to run a tight ship. There's thousands of bills filed every single year or legislative session. So, there has to be somebody as the gatekeeper making sure the right priorities are going through. And I've seen some of the priorities for next time around, such as, non-competes and paid family medical leave. So I think the right attention's being paid to the issues that matter to our constituents.
I love Speaker DeLeo. He's a terrific guy, and I know him very well. In fact, his office staff, both Maddie and Beth, said, "Uh-oh, here comes the hugger." And I'll give you an example. I was in Texas for my college roommate's wedding this summer for 2 days. My wife and I flew out on a Friday morning. We were back on a Sunday afternoon, and I had the Amesbury kids coming in from the track team. There were 70 of them. I had the governor lined up to speak with them. I had the lieutenant governor lined up to speak with them. But I said, you know what? I've got to get Speaker DeLeo down here. So with little to no notice, I walked into his office and I said, Beth, I brought up Speaker DeLeo in my speech out in San Antonio, Texas at my college roommate's wedding. I said, I love the guy. You know I love the guy, and I love you too. And she says, really, you did that? And I said, I've got 70 Amesbury High School students down here dying to meet him. And I kid you not, within 10 minutes, Speaker DeLeo came walking down the stairs, the grand staircase, where the Amesbury students were having their pizza lunch. We get them pizzas when they come in. And they met the governor, they met the lieutenant governor, and they met the Speaker of the House. And it's demonstrating that ability to work both sides of the aisle, I think, has been really great for the 1st Essex District. He's been a terrific friend. The leader of the Democratic Party has also been a dynamite friend, and I attribute that to my dad, who's in the audience tonight. He went to high school with Leader Ron Mariano, and Leader Mariano, I actually addressed him in my maiden speech in the House. That's how important of a person he is to me, and he's really helped me out in doing the very best I can for this district. but it's a great, it's a great administration. We've got a great leadership team, and I would be kicking myself when I leave the building tonight if I didn't mention House Ways and Means Chair Brian Dempsey, who is a phenomenal person and a great help in getting necessary funds back for the district.
Ms. Sullivan, I think you get 30 seconds.
Sure. I mean, there's not much more to add about the speaker. As I said, he's been so supportive of my campaign and bringing me into Boston to help connect with some of the other legislators and supporting the campaign. And his campaign director, Matt, have just been so supportive, and I really appreciate that as a first-time candidate. It's nice to have that support from leadership, and I know that will continue if I'm elected.
I guess I would ask the moderator how we're doing on time.
I was
5 minutes, so that's probably enough time for our closing statements.
Yes. So we'll go to our closing statements at this point, and we'll go in the reverse order that we did the opening statements, and we will start with Ms. Sullivan.
So you've had the opportunity to hear the differing views that Jim and I hold on a lot of issues. Two of the principles that I've built my campaign on are facts and straight answers, and that's something that will continue if I am elected and become your representative. I think my constituents deserve to know where I stand on the issues. I really encourage dialogue about the issues in order to make sure that we're solving our problems in the best way possible. I'm also proud to be a lifelong Democrat. I don't think that's partisan to say. It just represents my values. It doesn't prescribe a certain vote or policy position. I'm going to approach each issue or bill with an open mind and be sure that I understand the nuances of the proposed law or the question before I cast my vote. You've also heard a lot about some past votes and actions and plans for the future. And I think we need stronger leadership in our state representative on the tough issues. There's a lot of tough issues that need to be tackled, and on the easy issues, it's easy to go ahead and vote on unanimous issues. But whether it's education reform and funding, leadership on the environment, or on public safety, I will be that leader. I will stand up for you on the issues that matter. I will fight for Chapter 70 reform. I will go ahead and fight against gun manufacturers to prevent them from telling us what our laws do and do not say. These are only some of the issues that we face, and our community and our state need to come together, and that's why it's so important that you be represented by somebody like me who's going to fight for you on the tough issues. I'm not afraid to take a stand. I'm not afraid to tell you how I stand on the issues, and I'm really excited to talk to all of the voters in this district about what they want and need and serve them. That's why I'm asking you for your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Well, I've been talking and I've been walking and I've been listening a lot over the course of my public service career. Since 2008, I've been doing this. Actually, I first ran in 2007 for District 1 City Councilor. I walked the neighborhoods, I knocked on the doors, I listened to the constituents, and I've been doing it ever since. I'm fortunate to be your state representative. I want to continue to be your state representative. Talk about tough votes. I've taken some really tough votes in the last 22 months, which shows that I've demonstrated I am not a partisan individual. Some of those votes have cost me Republican votes. I know that there are Republicans that are watching tonight that will never ever vote for me again because of the certain votes that I've taken. But I said it a couple of times tonight, I'll say it again. There are 40,000 people. 40,000 of them aren't Republicans. We all know that, folks. This is Massachusetts. But you know what? 40,000 people have differing views, opinions, personal lives, and they need to be represented. And over the course of the last 22 months as your state representative, I've worked really hard to stay true to my word. I vote as many times probably on the Democratic side of the aisle, maybe even more so with some of those override votes than I have on the Republican side. But it's the ability to go back in and speak with the administration, tell them why I voted or how I'm planning on voting, that I think has kept my relationship with them on the up and up and been able to deliver for this district. For the next 2 years, or for this past 2 years, you've had great representation, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, in the 1st Essex District. We've worked 7 days a week. We've worked 7 nights a week. I think all of you know. You've followed us on social media. You've seen it in the newspaper, and you've certainly heard it on WNBP. And we're going to continue to work really hard for the next 2 years for you in the 1st Essex District, crossing party lines, building relationships, working with leadership on the other side of the aisle to deliver what's in the best interest for the 40,000 people that live here in Newburyport, Salisbury, and Amesbury. Thank you.
And while you're applauding for our panel, please, and the questions that they presented tonight. And for our sponsors that brought you this debate tonight, the Newburyport Chamber of Commerce, the Newburyport Daily News, PortMedia, and WNBP Radio. And the discussion continues, actually, as the candidates will be on WNBP this Saturday morning at 9 a.m. with Joe DBAs on the Local Pulse. This discussion will continue then, and we'd like to thank you very much for being with us here tonight. And again, if you haven't done so already, we urge you to get out and vote on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Have a good night.